Welcome to the Success Sculpting Show with Stephen Pierce, bringing you the right information right now to sculpt a more meaningful and memorable life of success. Join us each week to discover gems to help you grow your mental toughness, expand your will to win, and multiply your results. It's never been easier to learn what to do and how to do it to succeed at what you choose to do.
This is truly an experience you won't find anywhere else.
Now, here's your host, the Success Sculptor himself, Stephen Pierce.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Success Sculpting Show. I am your host, you know who, and today we have with us none other than Mr. Steve Olsher. And for those that don't know who he is the world's foremost reinvention expert. For those of you out there that trying to get a new life, trying to reinvent yourself, he is famous for helping individuals and corporations become exceptionally clear on their what. That is the one thing they were created to do. His practical, no-holds-barred approach to life and business propels his clients towards achieving massive profitability while also cultivating a life of purpose, conviction, and contribution. And he has over 25 years of business and entrepreneurial experience. And as the chairman and founder of liquor.com, of all domains, he is the online pioneer of this company, which launched, get this, everybody, on CompuServe's. I know some of you are like, what's the CompuServe? CompuServe's electronic mall in 1993. Come on, 1993. Talk about a visionary, right? He's also a New York Times bestselling author of What is Your What? Discover the one thing, discover that one amazing thing, that you were born to do. He's also author of the business technology book of the year called Internet Profits. The world's leading experts reveal how to profit online. He's also the host of the #1 rated radio show podcast, Reinvention Radio. He's an international keynote speaker and an in-demand media guest that has appeared on CNN, The Huffington Post, Entrepreneur on Fire, and countless other media outlets, including the Success Sculpting Show. Let's welcome Steve to the show. Steve, welcome to the Success Sculpting Show, man.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, listen, man, one of the things that I want to get into first is concerning your book. You say you believe there's one thing that prevents someone from living a life of happiness, fulfillment, and purpose. What is that?
Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, just based on the bio there, right? It all goes back to understanding what your what is, and those who are clear on what their what is, they just seem to really be able to live that life of fulfillment and purpose and conviction much more so than pretty much anyone else. And it's crazy how it works that way, but it does.
Now, some people hear the word what, it's like what? And that's like the question as well as the answer. So you state that there are 3 simple steps that someone can take to discover their what. Because I know a lot of people are like, well, I need to know what the steps are to discover my what so I can know what my what one thing is. So what are those steps?
Yeah. So the what is your what framework is comprised of 3 specific pieces. And so if we break it down into steps in terms of figuring out what those pieces are, that's how we're going to get to that answer. So let me just break that down for you so that you're clear on what the what is your what framework is comprised of.
Awesome.
And number 1, it starts with your core gift. I mean, we all have a core gift, whether it's teaching or entertaining or communicating or healing or protecting or enrolling or whatever that is. We all have a core gift that, even if it's just slightly greater than one of the other options, like even 5149, that there is something that stands out perhaps greatly above everything else, and in some cases perhaps just a little bit above other things. But really understanding what your core gift is going to be step 1 of that process. Step 2 is going to be understanding the primary vehicle that you will use to share that gift. And then step 3 is really understanding the people that you're most compelled to serve. And so it's the gift, the vehicle, and the people that make up the what is your what framework. And that is, in my way of thinking, really just the beginning part of the journey here. But if you can take those three important steps of understanding your gift, your vehicle, and your people, you're going to be much further down the path than most.
That's awesome. Now, for people that feel like, hey, man, you know what? I feel like I'm gifted at a lot of different things. How do they kind of sort through what they may feel as if is the best gift to start to leverage and strengthen?
Well, that's really where I believe you've got to start going down what I might call concurrent paths, right? Which is you've actually just got to get into the game. You've got to start doing what it is that you think you're compelled to do. And once you get into it and you actually start doing whatever that is, you'll get a good sense of whether or not this is something that actually you do want to be doing, right? So it's whether it's apprenticing or being an intern or just doing some volunteer work or whatever it might be, putting yourself in that environment is a really important first step.
Okay, now let's just say the person, Steve, is clear on their gift. It's like, okay, let's just say, because you mentioned teaching, let's just say, hey, they want to teach or they want to be a speaker or a facilitator or a coach or something like that. Now, when you talk about the primary vehicles, today, people can kind of become overwhelmed with the number of ways or number of vehicles that they can use. Should they do YouTube videos? Should they do a podcast like you have, like I have, like other people have? Should they create courses? Should they try to do workshops and seminars? Should they try to do webinars? In terms of,
no wonder I'm tired. Holy cow! You just named all the things that I do, and now I'm thinking like, my God, that is a lot of stuff, isn't it?
It is a lot of stuff. So
yeah,
where would a person start? Because right now you have flow, you have your systems in place. So you can be that multidimensional. So the person is just getting started. How do they pick, without being afraid of it being the wrong vehicle, how do they pick the vehicle to start with?
Well, that is, again, certainly in my way of thinking, it's reflective of going down those concurrent paths. In other words, trying webinars or trying to create an online course, or perhaps being a guest on podcasts first before jumping in and just saying, hey, I'm gonna start a show. I mean, look, bottom line is you got to try some of these things, right?
Right.
So until you actually get in there and try these things, you're not going to have a sense of what vehicle is going to make the most sense for you. And as an example, if you just simply look at audio, video, and the written word, you've got three options there, right? I mean, you've got audio where you could be doing a podcast. You've got video where obviously you could be doing videos.
Right.
And then you've got the written word where you could be doing blog posts. And so it could be just as simple as doing one of each and seeing which comes most naturally to you and which just flows out of you, right? And so that's something to give consideration to.
Yeah, so it's basically, don't be afraid to just test and find out, because not every vehicle is going to be the right fit for every person. So, for example, you have the channels and vehicles that you excel at. Others may excel at it and be really good at it, or maybe they're not, but that doesn't make it wrong for them. They just need to find out with their message, their core gift. Go out there, like you said, and experiment and just test and see which vehicle actually even fits the audience, the people. Because, if you're trying to reach, let's just say your audience is senior citizens, you may not have a good shot doing YouTube videos or posting videos to Facebook, right? That may not be a good channel for you, right?
It may not be. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And that's where when you really start down the path of implementing, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about, is just simply implementing. You get out of that land of theory and you get out of that, that whole theoretical discussion, and you really just start doing it. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where I think you really start to figure out what makes the most sense for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now here's a question for you, because you are known as America's reinvention expert. So I want to ask you a question. When people go into a new year, rather it's a new year here in America, which is like January 1st, or those that follow the scriptural new year, the month of Abib, which is the spring, or those over in Asia doing the Chinese New Year, it's a new year. People love new. They love New Year's. They love new cars, new homes. But if they go in with the same attitudes, same personalities, same habits, it doesn't matter how new that environment is. So how does a person reinvent themselves? And what actually first does reinventing mean, so that when you go into this new place, like a new day, which to me is more important than a new year, first of all, tell me this, what is reinventing yourself? What is that all about?
So lots of different definitions. And of course, when Burger King starts talking about reinventing the hamburger, I mean, we may have to switch over to another word there, but it's, right. It's really not at all about changing anything about who you are. I mean, a lot of people talk about, you got to just change your whole life or your business or whatever it is. And I don't think that's really what reinvention is all about. To me, it's really just, it's more a matter of kind of shedding the shackles of the personalities and the expectations and the whims and the agendas of others, and really just getting back to the core, to the essence of who you truly are. So I think it's more of a subtraction than an addition, more than anything else.
Sounds like a pruning process, like pruning off the weakest parts, the fears that may be holding you back, or the relationships that may be holding you back, or attitudes. Does that sound about right?
It does, yeah. I think that's a really good way of looking at it, and ultimately, you can look at 100 different definitions of what that is. Your genius zone, or your sweet spot, or whatever those terms are that you might use. That's really where we truly do want to be operating as much as we possibly can, which is in that zone where it just feels effortless. It's not forced. And that's really going to be a reflection of doing a number of things until you figure out what just comes as naturally to you as breathing, and time just simply flies by when you're engaged in that activity.
Right. Now, in your process, you're talking about the one thing in terms of the what. Now, a lot of times when people go to change their life events or business events that's going to help them to get better, one of the things that they are often told and that's often talked about is their why. And you actually implore people to discover their what. So what's the difference between the why and the what?
So, it's interesting. We had Simon Sinek on Reinvention Radio, and we had a chance to chat with him about that. And he'll argue it's a semantical difference, but to me, I think there's a very big difference between the two. The first really being that, if you think about your why, as he defines it, it's something that you choose, right? I mean, it's reflective of why you do what you do. You do what you do because you want to provide for your family, or you do what you do because you want to provide clean drinking water to children, in India, or you want to provide healthy meals for people, in remote parts of Africa. I mean, I don't know, right? Whatever that why is for you. Right. It's something that's external, and it's something that you choose. Whereas to me, your what, if you take a look at the What Is Your What book, you'll see that the only graphic element we have on there is a DNA strand. And that's because, to me, your what is really reflective of what is in your DNA. It's already within you. It's really that which has chosen you, as opposed to that which you have chosen. And that, to me, is the biggest difference, is you can choose your why. I don't think you can choose your what.
Interesting. So it sounds like the what is something you discover, right?
Well, I think it's an internal discovery.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really just a matter of looking within to what's already there.
Okay, so let me ask you this: how does that process get complicated when people are looking for other people to tell them what they should be doing, what they should become, and all that? So in other words, is all this extrinsic stuff, all this stuff externally that's influencing their what, and then they find themselves kind of unhappy or dissatisfied. So how does that create dissatisfaction and throw people off when they don't take the time to discover, go through that internal process that you're talking about, but yet they're allowing all these external events or people to decide what their what is.
Yeah, and I really just think it boils down to the old expression of, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right?
Right.
And so that's what ends up happening is other people have their own whims and agendas, and they often suck you into that. And so that's where a lot of people struggle, is getting out of that spell, if you will, of being dragged into the dreams and the visions of others. If you don't fulfill your own dreams, the odds are very good you'll be fulfilling the dreams of someone else.
Right. Now, can you give us some examples of people that discovered their what and they're actually out there leveraging it and changing the world as a result of it?
There's a lot of examples out there, and I'm fortunate to be able to, it's fun for me to get letters from people who have gone through the book and just to hear about what they've discovered and what's changed as a result. But in addition, for a number of years, I actually led a live workshop where it was basically sort of like What is Your What Live, if you will, that was called the Reinvention Workshop. And had literally thousands of people go through that workshop over the years. And so watching people firsthand discover what their what is and then having them keep in touch with me over the years, really is just unbelievably gratifying. But I'll share one story in particular, which I really think helps to illuminate the importance of understanding all three parts of the What is Your What framework, which is there was a woman who came to the Reinvention Workshop, and she was a oldish woman. I've learned not to ask women their age, but I'm going to guess she was probably in her late 50s, early 60s, so older than, obviously somebody just coming out of college. And she had been working in a career that she very much liked and felt drawn to for the better part of almost 3 decades when we met. But she just felt like a piece of the puzzle was missing, and she really couldn't hone in on exactly what that was. And so as we went through the What is Your What framework, she was very clear on certain elements of it. For instance, she knew that her core gift was healing. And she was a natural born healer. There was just no doubt about that. And that was expressed through her primary vehicle of nursing. And so she had been a nurse for, like I said, the better part of 3 decades when she came to the Reinvention Workshop. But again, she just felt like a piece of the puzzle was missing, and she didn't really know what it was. And it just turned out that the people that she was most compelled to serve was off from the people that she was actually serving, because she was working in a general hospital. And again, she generally liked it, generally liked what she did. But as we went through the process of really figuring out who the people are that she's most compelled to serve, and she wrote the words disadvantaged elderly on the board, you could kind of see like everything just light up for her. It was like somebody turned the key to the treasure chest, and as the treasure chest opened, just everything started to glow. It was like, like the angels singing. And it became very clear to her in that moment that the people that she's most compelled to serve are the disadvantaged elderly. And she wasn't serving them on a consistent basis. And so my thinking in terms of just kind of how she went through that process is that it really sparked something in her that she needed to be in an environment where she was working with the disadvantaged elderly on a consistent basis. And that's what she ended up doing. Is she ended up getting a job actually as a lead nurse, a charge nurse, or whatever they call it, with the VA hospital, where she's now for years now already working with the disadvantaged elderly, because many veterans unfortunately don't have it very good, and most of them are older now, and it's really made all the difference for her, and of course for those that she serves.
Wow. And she's a whole lot happier as a result, right?
She is, yeah, for sure.
Now, in your book, And for those that don't have the book, you need to go pick up the book. What is your what? Discover the one thing you were born to do. Now, in your book, you referenced the 4 paths, right? Now, what are those 4 paths, and how does one identify on which of those 4 they're currently on?
Yeah, well, once I describe them, I think you'll have a sense, or at least others around you would have a sense of the path you're on if you can't figure it out. And of course, you can always recruit people and ask them what their take is on things. But there really is 4 paths here and all of us are on one of these 4 paths. And sometimes those paths differ throughout our life, right? I mean, sometimes we're on one path and other times we're on another. But I think when I run through these, you'll get a sense of which path you're currently on. And so there are 4 core paths. One is what is known as let's just call them birthers, right? I mean, these are basically people who have known from the womb who they are and what it is that they're most compelled to do. And we kind of hate these people because they're just so clear on who they are and what they do, and sometimes they'll go off path a bit, but at the end of the day, they find their way back to what it is that they're truly compelled to do. And these are often the entertainers, the musicians, the actors, those sort of people who just really are crystal clear on what it is that truly puts fire in their soul. And so one group are the birthers. The other group is what we would call the shifters. And these are people like the nurse whose story I just described to you, who really just need to make a sort of a subtle adjustment to the what is your what framework to really get everything in line and get them really fired up about life again, right? And so that is the path of the shifter. They may just need to make a subtle adjustment to the gift or to the vehicle or to the people, and that would make all the difference. The third path is what we would call the reinventor. And this is someone who literally does a 180-degree turn and was doing something and is now doing something completely else. It's like the corporate attorney who had been in corporate law for 20 years and then decides, I can't do this anymore. And the next day shuts down shop and it becomes a surfing instructor in Maui, or something like that, right? I mean, it's somebody who you look at and you go, geez, how on earth did this person get from point A to point B? Because it's just so incredibly different from what it was that they were doing. I mean, like for me, when I started writing self-help personal development books, I mean, there were plenty of people in my circle who were like, who are you to write a self-help personal development book? I mean, you can barely help yourself. How are you going to try to help others? So, you do what you feel compelled and drawn to do, and that's where you go. So they're the reinventors, and then lastly, the fourth group are the wanderers. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but most people are just kind of wandering through life without a clear understanding of what their what is. And it's certainly through no fault of their own. I mean, these aren't discussions we have around the dinner table, and school certainly doesn't do a very good job of helping us figure that out. And a lot of the modalities that are available to us, what colors your parachutes and Myers-Briggs and StrengthsFinders and so on, often leave us with more questions than answers, which was certainly the case for me when I went through those. And so that's something to think about too, is, maybe I am just kind of awake, but not really alive. And I am on the path of the wanderer. And so that's the question, is what path are you really on then? Is it the birther or the wanderer or the shifter or the reinventor? And once you have a clear understanding of what path you're on, you can then make a decision about what to do.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned something. You talked about how, when you started writing self-help books, the thing is like, who are you when you barely help yourself? So I want to know what prompted you to write What Is Your What and begin sharing, all the different tools that have worked well for you and works for others. And the reason why I want to ask that question is because there are probably a lot of other people that maybe be in touch with what that core gift is, but they probably feel as if, like, who am I to go do this? And all that kind of stuff. So they become apprehensive, and the gift never goes out there to work. So what prompted you, and how does a person deal with that "who are you" idea in their head?
Yeah, and so for me, it really stemmed from. It wasn't my own near-death experience, but it was an experience of being with my stepfather on his deathbed in his final days. He was someone who raised me since I was 10, very much a father to me. And unfortunately, he passed a number of years ago already. But before his passing, I was sitting bedside with him, and I was holding his hand. And we were talking, and he was kind of fading in and fading out. And I actually had a vision of my funeral, not of his funeral, but actually of mine. And I think he was just kind of speaking to me potentially through that point of connection. But as I was holding his hand and having this vision of my funeral, and literally being in the casket and being lowered into the ground, and I could, kind of see and hear a little bit about what was going on, because I wasn't dead, obviously, because I'm having a dream and I can picture myself in there. So I could hear the words being spoken graveside, which were basically, "Here lies Steve Olsher. He dedicated his life to chasing the almighty dollar." And that's all that was said. And, it hit me really hard. And it occurred to me that my life up until that point had been of meaning to me and those closest to me, but really no one else. And I just didn't want that to be how I would be remembered. And having been in business for as long as I had been in business at that point, I knew that there were some tips and tools and strategies and shortcuts that had worked well for me in my life that I thought might help others. And I felt like if I went to the grave with that info in my head, I'd not only be doing a huge disservice, to me from the standpoint of not memorializing a lot of what it is that I had learned over the course of my life, but also I'd be doing a huge disservice to those who are literally waiting for me to show up in their lives. And so that's when I started putting pen to paper and created this "What is your what" framework and so on. And it was never really my goal to put it on the New York Times list. I mean, that ended up happening, which is super cool. But really, it was more a matter of, I figure if I can help people discover their what, and they can go out and share that with strategic abandon and help those that they're most compelled to serve, that it'll have a nice trickle-down effect. And those folks will go out and hopefully discover theirs and help those who are waiting for them to show up, and so on and so forth. So really just trying to do my part is what got me started down that path.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, not a near-death experience, but there was that mortality experience where you start to think about your own mortality, and hey, at the end, did you dedicate your life to chasing the almighty dollar? So for people that are listening, it just comes to mind, is your tombstone or eulogy going to be wrapped in the idea that you spent your life dedicated to being concerned with what other people think about you? You understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of us live our lives through that. So I mean, that's a powerful moment that if people just sit and think about that at the end, and there is an end coming, what's going to be the summary? So that was the trigger for you. So those that are reading your book or have read your book or are listening to us, if they're going to go get the book and they come to the conclusion that the current job that they have or the current business that they're in is not really in alignment with their core gift, or what they're doing is not really that primary vehicle. Let's just say they have a job. Now, obviously, you're not expecting them like get up, they got bills to pay, mouths to feed, have things they have to take care of. How do they go about creating that transition, making that shift? We talked about reinvention. That could be like pruning off. Hey, you have to prune off maybe that current employment somehow, some way. How do they make that transition so they're more in alignment with that what if they're not currently in alignment with it right now and they have a job?
So we don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face, right? So we don't quit our job. That's number one. But I do think that it's really important to gain clarity on the fact that there's just a lot of hours in the day, right? And so when you're going to work, you can use that time on the bus, or when you're leaving work heading home, you can use that time when you get home to really begin putting into motion some of this that you believe you're really compelled to do. And so we have the weekends. We have time. We have a lot more time than I think most of us realize. And so in those off hours, what I would suggest is really digging deep and figuring out what it is that if you didn't get paid to do it, you would just do it, right? I mean, that's one of the questions that I'm sure you've seen or heard 100 times.
Yeah.
And just get started down the path of doing whatever that is. And as soon as $1 comes in through the work that is more reflective of what you are truly compelled to do, then you're basically kind of looking at this like a recipe mixture, which is, well, at that point, 99.9% of your income is derived from what you don't want to do. And you get that first dollar, and, now 0.1% of your income is derived from what you do. And the more you stay the course and the more that you really get out there with strategic abandon, sharing what this is and offering products, programs, or services related to it, you'll find that recipe mixture gets to 90-10, and then 80% of what you don't want to be doing and 20% what you do, and 70-30 and 60-40. And I mean, you'll know when it's time to cut the rope, but eventually you will be able to generate enough income from what it is that you are truly compelled to do to cut that rope.
That's interesting. And while you were talking, I was sitting here thinking about the amount of unhappiness that a lot of people experience. And sometimes they can contribute that unhappiness to where they're at or whom they're with. And I don't know how many people really consider that a level of their unhappiness may be coming from, their what, or the lack of understanding what their what is and not being in alignment with their core gift. Now, it goes without saying that, look, your book's gotten a lot of accolades, and a lot of this message is resonating with a bunch of people and is well received. So why do you think that's the case with this particular topic at this particular time?
Well, I just think that we're in a very interesting period of time from a business perspective all around, and from a personal development perspective all around. But if you look at where we're at in terms of technology and how technology is really coming into play in so many ways and replacing so many jobs. I mean, you can't even look at the workforce now and compare it to what it'll be 10 years from now and recognize the two together. I mean, there'll be no comparison, because so many of the jobs that are done now, especially in the minimum wage sector and the factory sector and so on, are going to be replaced by automation. It's just the nature of the beast.
Right.
And so, and also there's, from the personal development side, I think there's kind of an awakening, right? I mean, we can look at what's going on from a political perspective, and we can look at what's going on just in terms of the world in general. And I think that we're God, I mean, I don't want to turn this into a political discussion or, a societal discussion, but I think that people are really waking up to the fact that no one's going to take care of us but ourselves.
Right.
We got to do for ourselves because no one's going to do for us. Right.
Yeah.
And those that do for us sometimes have ulterior motives.
Exactly.
And they want to do their own things based on their own whims and agendas, and those aren't necessarily in our best interests. So I think that's part of what's going on here as we shift to this gig economy and we shift to this hustle mentality, or whatever you want to call it. And there's definitely a lot to be said for controlling your own destiny. And I think that, at the end of the day, when the average salary is $37,000 a year, and we can create an online course that we can sell for $500. If we can sell a couple of those a week, doing simple math here, I mean, that's $1,000 a week. That's $52,000 a year. That puts us in some pretty good territory insofar as how it compares to the average salary of somebody working 40 hours a week, probably doing something they hate.
Wow. Now, with all this talk of what is your what in the book, I'm sure because we have thousands of listeners, so I'm sure there's quite a few that are like, hey, man, I need to get a copy of this book so I can discover what is my what. Now, is it true that you actually give the book away for free? And if that's the case, why do you do it? And how can those that are listening grab a complimentary copy?
Well, yes, we give the book away for free, and it is the entire book, not just a chapter or anything of that nature. So yeah, if you go to whatisyourwhat.com, you can grab a free copy of the entire book. And why do we give it away? Well, I think it really just boils down to, again, the main reason why I wrote the book, right? Which is I honestly feel like if you can go out and discover what your what is and share that with strategic abandon, you're going to make this world a better place. And if you make this world a better place, it's going to impact others who will do the same. And so that's going to make this world a better place for me. It's going to make it better for my children, for my children's children, and so on. And so, somebody's got to be willing to be that first domino and kind of set things in motion. And this is one of the things I'm willing to do.
That's awesome. Now that domain again is whatisyourwhat.com, right? So if you want to go get a full complimentary copy, not a chapter or two, but a full copy of the book, go over to whatisyourwhat.com. Now I want to circle back to something we were talking about earlier. You were talking about the lady that went to the workshop. And the reason I want to bring that up is because I'm a lifetime learner. I'm perpetually learning. I love to read. I love to watch. I love to listen. But there's nothing like the immersive experience of a live event, a live training, and a live workshop. So tell us a little bit about the Reinvention Workshop itself.
Yeah, so I don't actually do the Reinvention Workshop any longer. I may bring it back, but for right now, I'm not doing it.
Oh, wow,
okay. We do have an online course, the Reinvention Workshop online course, which is basically a recording of me doing the event, right? So if you buy the book, you'll have an opportunity to enroll in that, and it's a fairly inexpensive course. I think it's $49 or something of that nature. But you'll have an opportunity to really see me, take people through the what is your what process personally, and I think it'll help folks gain a clearer understanding of exactly what it is and how to work within the framework and really discover what it is that you're most compelled to do and bring that to fruition.
Awesome. Now let's shift gears, because what is your what is only one of the books that you've written. You've written the book Internet Profits. So what about the Internet Profits? And for those that don't know, and you don't have that book, it's called Internet Profits: The World's Leading Experts Reveal How to Profit Online. And a lot of the listeners of this show know I've been marketing online since the late 1990s and been out there doing all kinds of workshops. In fact, a lot of people listening to the show came to workshops, saw me speaking at Get Motivated and all these different places. So they're familiar with marketing online. So this is definitely in their wheelhouse. But my question about that is, how does this book help people to share their what with the world?
Well, as you mentioned in my bio early on, I've been online since 1993 when we launched on CompuServe's Electronic Mall, right? So I've been online a long, long time.
Long time.
And it really occurred to me that even though I've been online a long time, I really still, at the time of that writing, I still didn't have a clear understanding of how some of the folks who were really crushing it in the space were doing what they were doing. And so I sat down with 25 of the world's leading experts to get their take on how to profit online, and that's what was that's what Internet Profits became then. And again, that's PROPHETS. And so that book is really designed to help you leverage the power of what the internet can do for you. And most of us still don't use the internet as well as we could or as well as we should. And so Internet Profits provides some good insight into how many of the world's most successful online entrepreneurs have been able to do what they've been able to do.
Yeah, and I totally agree. The internet is this huge channel that has multiple vehicles, and we know that step 2 is that vehicle. So I would definitely recommend those that are looking to expand their information and their insights from those that are out there doing it, not just talking about it, that are doing it, to pick up a copy and see what some other experts have to say on leveraging the internet and profiting online. Now, just an interesting quote. You said that college may be the single worst investment a person could make. Now, do you honestly believe that?
Yeah. It's one of those things that I'm sure I'm going to hear a lot more about here as time goes by, as my kids get older, and I got a kid going into high school next year, so it'll be interesting to see how this conversation changes, if at all. But what I will say is that it's not necessarily the worst investment that a person can make. I do think it's the worst investment that a parent can make.
Interesting.
From the standpoint of, when you look at the statistics, 85% of those who graduate with a 4-year degree do not work within their field of study within 5 years of graduation, right? And so why is that? And it's because it's kind of a social experiment gone wrong, right? I mean, the only thing that we've done well with it is we've kind of taken the kid out of the house and take the bottle out of their hand from their mama and put them in front of the bartender, and then now they're getting their bottle from the bartender, right? I mean, so it's just like that's the biggest difference there is they're still getting the bottle, they're still getting force fed, but it's it's just from the bartender versus from their mama. So reality is most people who go to school just do it because it's an opportunity to kind of get away and spread their wings and whatever, other BS we want to call it.
Right.
And very few people who go to school even know what they want to do when they're there, right? So if you are very clear on what you want to do, if you know that you want to be an architect, or you want to be a doctor or an engineer or whatever, then by all means, you got to go to school. But the majority of people aren't clear, and they just go out and they just pick a major because they're forced to pick a major. And that's what ends up happening, right? And so the only return on investment, if you will, that the parent ends up seeing after their kid spends 4 years in the social experiment is the return of that child to their couch, or to the bedroom that they left 4 years ago. And I don't think that's the kind of return that they were expecting. So, unless someone is really clear on what their what is and what it is that they want to do, I just don't think that school is college specifically is the right choice.
Right. Now, and so that everyone can know the difference, you're not talking about education and learning. You're just talking about how people end up going to college, which I agree. And that kind of goes back to what we're talking about. If you don't know your what, you can end up doing what somebody else wants you to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Going to college. Exactly right. Yeah, going to college, or going to college, taking a major that you have no interest in, right? Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that's what concerns me. Is we have a lot of wanderers, and a lot of those wanderers end up in college, and with the way that college is now, with room and board and just tuition and everything else. You could be talking about $100,000 proposition easy.
Yeah. Wow. So look, if you're one of the people that feel as if you're a wanderer, and I'm willing, if I was a betting and gambling man, that is a large percentage of people. Hey, listen, wander no more, or make your last wander be over to whatisyourwhat.com and pick up a free copy of the book, whatisyourwhat.com, so you can get out of that wandering, man. Get out of that wandering. Hey, look, Steve, I'm going to leave the last words to you. People know how they can get in touch with you over at whatisyourwhat.com. If you have another way that you want people to contact you, be sure to drop that on our listeners. But I want to leave the last word of today's show with you. For those that are looking to reinvent themselves, they're looking to make that progress, and they need to discover what is their what. What are the last words you want to leave them with today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I really do think it just boils down to being very clear on the fact that you are the solution to someone else's problem. And they are literally waiting for you to show up in their lives right now. So if you, in my way of thinking, if you don't discover what your what is and share that with strategic abandon, then you're really going to find yourself waking up without that fire in your soul and just feeling like, God, can this day ever end? And I, of course, don't want that for you. What I want for you is to wake up with a fire in your soul and to feel like there aren't enough hours in the day to get done what you've got to get done. And when you've got that sort of focus and purpose, you'll find that things that used to bother you will carry a lot less weight. And so ultimately, you have a gift to share. And there are people who are literally praying for you to show up in their life right now. And so my hope for you is that you discover what your what is, and you get to those who need you most. And once they can get off of their knees and stop praying because you've showed up in their life with whatever that solution is that they have been looking for, well, then it's time for them to start paying, right? And I do believe that you should be paid extraordinarily well for what comes as naturally to you as breathing. And in my way of thinking, that really just boils down then to having clarity on what your what is. And I hope you decide to grab the book. And I look forward to hearing from you with what opens up as a result of going through it.
Thanks for listening to the Success Sculpting Show with Stephen Pierce.
If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address.
SuccessSculptingShow.com to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archives of previous podcasts and check the schedule to join us for our next live streaming Success Sculpting Show webcast. This has been a Success Sculpting Incorporated production. Join us next time for another edition of the Success Sculpting Show with Stephen Pierce, and tell your friends.